Hi, my name is Dick, and I'm an alcoholic and a codependent, and I'm also an adult child, and I have post-traumatic stress disorder. And with all three of them, or four of them actually, I realize how much I've survived with my higher power's help. When I came in 1980 to 12 steps, I didn't believe there was a real God. I didn't think he existed. But as I grew in the program and stayed in and did work, I started to realize there's all kinds of things I don't understand. And I started to think, I call it coincidence or luck. When I was a drunk from the time I was 10 years old till I was 35, I drank and I didn't have any spiritual life. And when I got into the program and they were promoting a higher power, I struggled with it because I didn't believe in God and I didn't know what else, how am I going to get a higher power? Well, thank God for recovery people and sponsors. They told me, they said, the first time I heard it was, all you need to know, there is a God and you're not it. And I thought, well, I don't know about that, but I'll think about it. And as I worked with the spiritual part of this program, or the whole program spiritual, I started to see things differently and I started to understand. One of the things is I was saying earlier about, if I were told without knowing it growing up and it's part of reality, if they had told me that a caterpillar will spin a cocoon and stay in there and then come out a butterfly, I would have said, you're crazy. But we know that happens. And all these other things that, how starfish know when to come up on the beach and die, how salmon know how to get back to their birthplace. These things, I never thought much about them, but now I realize how do geese know how to fly wherever they're going and how do they get there? So that was the beginning of my spiritual journey in recovery. And I thought I found a higher power in the recovery program and that was it. But that wasn't it, because as I studied and read the Bible and read theology and philosophy, I started to see a bigger world of, how the seasons changing and the trees knowing how to grow and all this stuff it's beyond me. But anyway, I found out that I'm a survivor, and how I've survived. When I was an alcoholic, I've wrecked 6 cars. I mean, totaled them out so bad that you sure got killed. Didn't get killed. Well, then what else did I do? I wrecked cars. I hung out in bars where people carried guns and shot and people got killed. And I thought nothing of that. And I used to be a troublemaker, and I aggravated some really big, strong people that could have hurt me real bad, and they didn't. So what I've learned is that God, I didn't meet God when I got in the program. God had my back ever since I can remember, since I was born. He's been making sure that I don't get killed. And some of my story is that I drove motorcycles for 10 years drunk, so drunk I'd tip over. And everyone say, you can't do that, you're going to get killed. Well, I'm still here. Motorcycle driving drunk, going into bars and places and smarting off and screaming at people that could have hurt me. They didn't. And then when I was in the military, I antagonized a guy that I found out later was a karate expert. He could have busted me up in 2 seconds. He didn't. So I kept learning, and I said he covered me when I was drinking, when I was riding a motorcycle drunk, the car wrecks, and then it got into more violence with the police and shootings and stuff, that got crazy. So I started to understand that he's been covering me even when I was an alcoholic. And my alcoholism, I have numerous tickets, accidents, things that normal people don't do. But when I got in recovery, I thought, now God will take care of me. Well, he was all along, because what I learned was that when I started cooperating with him in the program, it says, turn your life and will over. And then it also says 11, pray and meditate and think about him and have a relationship with him. Well, I didn't have that right away, but now I have a real strong, I'm walking with God all day long. I talk to him like a friend. Anyway, I got into recovery, and they, I think it was, the cancer came first. I got esophageal cancer, and it's a very tenacious, dangerous cancer. The survival rate isn't very good. Well, then they made me prepare to die. I had to make out a will and a living will and do all this stuff, because you're probably not going to make it. Well, I'm still here. I survived cancer, and it was a massive surgery. The doctor said it was miraculous the way I recovered. So I looked at that as, yeah, I do believe there is something taking care of me. Well, after the cancer, no, the cancer came later. I was in Vietnam, and that was a real bad experience. And I almost got killed 3 or 4 times, but I didn't. And so I survived the war. And not only did I survive Vietnam, when I came back from Vietnam in 1969 or 70, my family told me, because I was still drinking and crazy and acting out and doing very dangerous stuff, they said, you need to find a good woman and get married, and she'll settle you down. So I thought, okay, maybe that'll work. And I looked around, found somebody that I liked, and I went forward with it, and we got married. Well, we didn't know, everybody else knew, both families and all our friends said, why are you getting married? And we said, because we love each other. And they said, yeah, no, but you're beating her up and you're not even married. She's doing all kinds of crazy stuff to you. It doesn't make sense. And I said, well, I'm getting married anyway. That's what they told me to do. Well, it was 2 years, from 1972 to 74, I was married, and that was a very lethal marriage. I was really messed up from Vietnam. I was violent, angry, hateful, just not in a good spot. Very, very messed up, mentally, spiritually, physically. And my wife was very, very codependent, and she supported me no matter what I did. And so between the two of us, we're the only two thought the marriage was good. And it turned out that both families decided that the only way this marriage will end is one will kill the other one, and one will go to prison. And we ain't too sure which is which, because she was pretty goofy as like I was. So anyway, we didn't die. And I had a spiritual awakening that God more or less impressed on me. If you don't get out of this, it's not going to be good. And so we ended the marriage, very difficult. And I was in depression for 5 years, because I thought marriage was forever and I'm never getting divorced. Well, I only made it 2 years. And in that depression, I would drink excessively and put myself in any kind of danger that was around. Police with guns didn't scare me one bit. Thugs or gangs, I have no fear of being killed. Well, it turns out that in that 10 years, I had a lot of problems, and I almost got dead a couple of times. But as that went on, I got this into recovery after 8 years, from 72, or no, 8 years, 72 to 74, and then 6 years of heavy drinking. and I got into AA. I went to a treatment center and I got quitting drinking, and I seen something happening in recovery. And these people had problems like I had. I mean, real violent, seriously mental, emotional, spiritual problem, and they were doing good. And so I schmoozed with them and said, you know, how do you have such a good life and attitude when, you know, life is so terrible? And they said, well, that's the higher power thing. When you get a higher power and you believe in it, you will get these miracles too. And I thought, no, not me. I'm not going to get them. I was wrong. I stayed in recovery. I got spiritual. I started reading Bible studies, workshops, clergy, everything. And I started getting better, and I was feeling good, and everything was going my way. And after the bad marriage, Vietnam, the bad marriage, and then the cancer in 2005, was all three of them very, very high percent I should not have survived. And I did. And I know now, looking back, that the higher power helped. He took care of me when I didn't take care of myself. I found that out. So I got through the cancer, which was horrible. And that wasn't the end. So now I've become retired, disabled, veteran, and I have a pension and I'm retired. So I started snowboarding. I live in Minnesota and it gets cold in the winter, and I've survived Minnesota for 70 years. So what else I did was I started snowboarding. I would take a trail. For a while, I had a fifth wheel and a pickup. And then I started going with this Airbnb, but I would travel anywhere in the world that I wanted to that was warm during the winter. Then I'd come back in the spring and live in Minnesota from spring to fall. Then I would travel again. I've been doing that for 20 years. And the miracle of that is the way I did it and the way I drive and the things I think. I drove like I was, you know, I had no respect for rules or speed limits or anything else, but I survived. This survival stuff, I didn't want to be a survivor. In fact, I was looking forward to somebody doing me in. But what happened was that with this program and a higher power, I started liking living instead of thinking it's horrible. And so I survived the program and I stayed in it and I did what they told me, and I started to get the promises and the spiritualness. So I think, well, that's it. Now I won't have any more of these near-death experiences. There was 3 in Vietnam, then my lethal marriage and the cancer, and I've totaled out 6 cars completely. So all of those, I heard the word often, this is a miracle, you should be dead. No, I'm not. So to me, that spells survivor. But I took a 1 year, I decided to go where I've always wanted to go my whole life, and that's Australia and New Zealand. So I went down to Australia and I spent 3 months there. And then I had to renew my passport. So I went over to New Zealand for a week and a half to get my passport, you know, my visa back. And while I was in New Zealand, I was sightseeing and I went up on a mountain. It was, there's supposed to be a glacier up at the top. And I have pictures of all of this, but I didn't know how hard it was. It was a path. It wasn't like climbing up on rocks and stuff. There was a path, but it wasn't very safe. It was loose rocks and pretty not safe. But anyway, I started going up and I didn't know how high it was. So I'm getting older and I thought, man, I can't go that far. I'm going to turn around. Every time I thought that, a couple would come down or a group and say, oh, it's just a little bit further. It's beautiful. You should keep going. Okay, kept going, finally got up to the top, took beautiful pictures, and I started back down. And most of the time on the mountain, almost 90+%, I was all by myself. I went up there, I walked myself. And I remembered a real steep, loose gravel place on the path that I made a mental note. I said, you better watch for this when you come down because it's dangerous. Well, I forgot. And I'm walking down and walking down. And all of a sudden I hit that loose gravel and I started to fall. And I fell off the mountain. I fell off. And when I fell, this is surviving and a higher power in my eyes, no matter what. There were two people on the path below me and two people on the path above me. And they both, all four people saw me fall. And the one guy said that he said there was a wooden sign saying something. And he says, when you were flying down the mountain, you broke that sign right off. And I wound up in some bushes and I had gotten head injuries and bleeding and pretty bad. So anyway, these four people came to me and they're going to help me. And they pulled me out of the bushes and they put a cap on my head. I've got 5 big scars on my head where I cut my head open. And they put a cap on my head to help stop the bleeding. They put a coat on me. And these four people were around me until somebody had a cell phone and they called 911. And so they sent up a helicopter to get me. And they sent up, what do they call him? A ranger guy, another paramedic to help me. Well, when the paramedic got there, here I am bleeding all over the place. And he kept saying, stay with me. And I thought, what do you mean stay with you? I ain't going nowhere. I can't, I'm too hurt. But I didn't know he was afraid I'd go into shock and die. But what happened was these people got the bleeding stopped enough. Then the paramedic asked me, he said, I think he was checking my mental stability along with information. Because he said, did you see a helicopter? And I said, yeah, he came in. I'm a Vietnam vet. I've been in helicopters a lot of times. And he said, well, what did he do? And I says, he flew in and then he flew away. I guess he didn't like me. And the guy had a radio and he called the helicopter and he said, you got to come back and get this guy. And the helicopter guy, I could hear him. He said, no, it's too dangerous to lower the bed and swing it in where he is. It's too dangerous. And they said, you're going to have to carry him out. And I heard him say on the radio, if we carry him out, we're carrying a corpse. You have to come back and get him. So the helicopter came back and swung the bed in. The paramedics and the 4 people got me on the bed. And a little humor about falling off the mountain in New Zealand, another survival, was that the medic said, are you afraid of heights or motion sickness or any of that stuff? And I says, no, I'm a Vietnam vet. This is old hat. He said, oh, good. Then you're not going to throw up on me. And I says, no way. Anyway, they put me on the bed. He buckled himself to it somehow. And me and him took off hanging 90 feet below a helicopter. And they took me down to the parking lot and landed me. And then they put me in an ambulance and took me to the hospital. When I got to the hospital, it turned out that a nurse and a doctor got me in and they were trying to stitch up my head and they weren't having good luck. But they both said, you almost bled to death. So if these people hadn't been there, if the paramedic wasn't there, if the helicopter didn't come, all these things that before I'd say, boy, I'm lucky, what a coincidence. There isn't that much luck in coincidence. So I did learn something that God's got your back whether you know it or not. Now, what he wants from me is to cooperate with him, do what he wants, his will, not mine. And so I made the paper in this little town in New Zealand where they said that tourist falls off mountain, survives beyond, never should have made it, never. But I did. And I only know that because I took a taxi to the airport to go back to Australia. And the driver said, did you hear there was a guy fell off the mountain? And I said, yeah, I know, that was me. And he says, no, this guy fell off a big mountain. And I said, yeah, I got the scars to show it. And he said, that was you? You look great. He says, you look like you're in good shape. He says, what the paper said, you know, you were really messed up. And I really was, but I have a higher power, and he watched over me and kept me alive. So that was the end of New Zealand. And I went back to Australia. And then the way I'm not a real safe, conscious person. And that's why I probably should be dead more than once. But anyway, the other humor was in the northern part of Australia. When I went there, I decided I'm going to dive the Great Barrier Reef. And when I went to do that, they said, you got stitches in your head and you got all these problems. Sharks can smell a drop of blood a mile away. And I said, well, sharks got to eat too. So I went out and I scuba dived, and I didn't get eaten by a shark. They weren't sure that I should do that, but I did it, and no sharks came, thank God. And then I came back and came back to Minnesota after my Australia, New Zealand trip. And another trip I had that was miraculous was I was in Mexico, and I was in a good motel where I was, or hotel, 5-star, where I was safe. But I went out and I had a dinner at this restaurant, and I did not know that was the drug dealer's front. The restaurant was a front for the drug people. And I got into it with a drug guy. He was trying to make me drink, and I said I wouldn't drink, and he got mad. But anyway, he and the other guys were giving me the raspberries, so I got up and left. But the lady that gave me the ticket to get into that restaurant, I asked her if she wanted to go ride on the motorcycle. I'm going to take the motorcycle up in, I rented one. I'm going to take it up in the hills and look at the churches. And she said, well, I shouldn't, but yeah, that'd be kind of fun. I didn't know what that meant. Now I know that was one of the mules for the drug dealers. She transported drugs for the drug dealers. And when they saw her riding on the back of the motorcycle, they thought something was up, which wasn't. We were just going up the mountain to look at churches. We did that and came back. But I got a call from the drug dealer, and he says, you better stay away from her. And being a veteran, I don't like being threatened. And I told him, I said, we're not doing anything wrong. We just went up and looked at churches. He says, I'm just telling you, you better stay away from her, or your dead meat. And I said, well, that I do understand from the old days. But I didn't know he was a drug dealer. And when the hotel told me who he was a head high honcho, and he was really mad at me. And they said, he will kill you. The miracle came where I was leaving back to go to America from Mexico on a plane. But that night, they kept trying to set me up to get me alone, to kill me, or do whatever they're going to do. And what happened was there was a sign in the lobby of the hotel that the bus is going to the airport at 7 o'clock or 7:30. And I'm always punctual. I was down there at 7 o'clock. And the lady said, you're going to miss your bus. And I said, no, I got a half hour. It ain't leaving till 7:30. That's what the sign said. She said, no, they changed it. It's leaving now at 7 o'clock. Then I realized they had a cabbie waiting for me if I'd have missed that bus. I got on the bus, got to the airport. The police and military showed up because I thought they were going to bomb the plane. I don't know. But I got on the plane and I got home, and they told that this girl was kind of like being a tourist guide for me. So I felt I owed her, and I gave her my number. I said, if you're ever in Minnesota, I'll show you around. Well, anyway, when I found out who she was, the people that were in the know with the drug dealers said, don't talk to her at all. If she calls you, she's got your number. When you hear her voice, don't say anything, hang up. And I thought, she isn't going to call me because, this thing's really screwed up. Well, she called me 6 times and I hung up every time. And they finally They told me if she calls you and talks to you, they'll be listening. So after 6 times, I gave up. And I did get a call from him, and he said, don't think you're safe in Minnesota, because we got people all over the country and all over the world. We can get you. And they had my address and my phone number. It rattled me. But that didn't happen either. I didn't talk to her anymore. I didn't have nothing to do with her. And eventually I got no more calls. They forgot about me, and I'm grateful for that. So that's another survival. So surviving is, you never know, like stepping off a sidewalk and onto a street when a car is coming or a truck or what, you don't know. This, surviving, usually you don't even know you're doing it. And so I'm very grateful for the times that I've looked back and I said, God got into my life in 1980 when I went to treatment at Hazelden. And I said, no, now I realize he was there all along doing stuff to keep me safe. And I've never been very safety conscious. Vietnam, I volunteered for a lot of stupid stuff that could have ended poorly, but it didn't. And my marriage, when I'd get in a drunken rage, we were both crazy and somebody could have got killed. There was a lot of blood. I put her in the hospital one night when I was drunk. I don't remember it very well, but those kind of things, they keep happening. And then you wake up and you realize, oh my God, God's been covering me or I wouldn't be here. And the cancer and the fall off the mountain. And another survival thing that makes me know that I have a higher power was when I got the cancer, how I got diagnosed. I went to the VA in Minneapolis and they said, no, you're okay. You're good to go south. I went to Tucson, Arizona, where my sister was. And while I was there, I was eating breakfast with her and I got sick. And she got upset. She says, you need to go to the doctor. You threw up your breakfast. And I said, no, it's just indigestion. Well, she got really upset and made me go see her doctor. And I did. I said, okay, I'll go. I went into a GI doctor and they were very busy. And I didn't see a doctor. I saw a nurse practitioner. And I told her my symptoms of what I was having. And she said, I'm not going to chase ghosts. We're going to send you next door to the hospital and put a scope down there and see what's happening in your stomach. Okay, went next door. They got a scope and they put it in there. And I was a counselor for a while of addiction, and I'm pretty well trained of watching people. And when I came in, it was just like, well, we're going to do a scope and this and that, just routine doctoring. When I came back from the hospital, everybody was, are you okay? Are you fine? Do you want anything? I thought, boy, you're talking to me like you think I'm dying. Well, I had a massive tumor in my esophagus, a cancerous tumor. So the miracle of this, talking about a higher power, is it's a miracle my sister got me to go because I don't like doctoring. Then when I got there, it's a miracle this nurse practitioner sent me next door. They found my cancer and they said it was a massive tumor. So they didn't give me much chance of living. Well, then the hospital did a computer printout of, I needed a surgeon and what is that called for cancer? Oncologist, whatever. I need a cancer doctor and a surgeon. The computer spit out a doctor for each one. And when my doctor was looking at it, another doctor who was not involved in my case at all was walking by. He looked over his shoulder and he said, does your client have esophageal cancer? And he says, yeah. They didn't tell me this till later because they didn't have the biopsy, but he said, yeah. And he said, don't send them to that surgeon. This guy in Phoenix is an expert at that. He's done about 50 of them. He's renowned for esophageal surgery. he lined the guy out and put this other guy's name in there. Well, then I come and I got the paper of who I'm going to go see. And I said, well, did I get demoted? How come you took this doctor out and put this one in? And the guy says, no, you got promoted. This guy is the best at what you need. So luck, coincidence? I don't think so. This doctor just happened to recommend that. Well, I went and seen this surgeon, and what happened was he was very busy, very well known, very high up on the food chain. And he asked me, he says, how did you get to me? And I said, well, you wouldn't believe me if I told you I got friends in high places. The doctor going by recommended you instead of the one they were going to give me. And he said, well, the reason I asked is, he said, this is going to be a major surgery and you probably won't make it. But if you do, he says, I'm the best at what I do and I'll try to keep you alive. I said, okay, that's great. He said, but the other thing, you winding up with me, he said, you're a Vietnam veteran. And he says, I volunteer 1 day a week at the Vets Hospital here. And I will do you at the VA for free. The government will pick up the check. And I thought, I don't know. I don't want major surgery at a VA because, you know, that's a learning hospital. He said, no, you'll get the same treatment at the VA as you would at Chandler Hospital. So don't worry about it. So anyway, I thought, okay, he seems like he's really good. So I went, and the VA bombarded me with appointments, and I went, and they said, you got like 15 appointments before we can do anything. And I thought, he said he was going to take care of this. And now I got the VA telling me what I'm going to do. I got in my truck and I was going to leave and just leave. I'm not going to do this. I'd rather die of cancer than go through all this. And his secretary called me in my truck on my cell phone and said, did you just leave the VA? And I said, yeah, I did. And I was ready to wrap it. I was going to leave. And she said, well, I wanted to tell you, don't pay any attention to what they told you. That your doctor will tell you what you need and what to do, and you do what he says. You don't do what the VA says. So that gave me confidence. Oh, he is on top of this. I found out that the VA doesn't want to lose his 1 day a week volunteer. He runs the show when he's there. So he operated. I almost died, but I didn't. And now I'm recovering. I have a lot of aches and pains and stomach trouble and everything. They took 1/3 of my stomach and my whole esophagus. So it was pretty major surgery. And I have digestive problems and everything else, but that doctor, who is such a miracle worker, he said, you're going to have some side effects from this. This was major surgery and we took out a lot of stuff. He says, just remember, when you have trouble eating or sleeping or whatever you have to face, you're lucky to be alive. And I've had to go more than once back to that and say, oh man, I can't take this, the side effects from that surgery. And then I remember him saying, you're lucky to be alive. And I'm feeling pretty good now. I'm getting ready for another move and stuff. So I am looking at a new adventure. I'm getting old, and I never thought I'd have to get old, but I am. So I'm headed to Phoenix this year. And I'm going to try to decide what kind of life I want to live. I'm having to move into a condominium or a townhouse because I'm losing my ability to take care of houses and yards and driveways and all that stuff. I just got to, I'm learning in my old age. I thought limits were for other people, and now I'm realizing I'm getting some that I'm going to have to obey. So the survival rate for alcoholism, codependency, post-traumatic stress, and cancer, and falling off mountains, and even surviving alcoholism is a miracle. The way I drank, it was pretty bad. So I am a survivor, and I owe it all to 1980 coming into recovery and staying there because of the miracles I saw. I couldn't understand these people with worse problems than mine were doing good. So what I did was I stayed, and I was trying to figure out what have they got that I don't have. And I found out what it was. It's a higher power. It's a belief system, and the things, the world as we know it is pretty complicated and pretty mysterious. And in the universe, we're like a grain of sand, our whole existence and everything we know. So you go from the infinite big, which is the universe, which we couldn't even find us, to the infinite small, where they just found out that they thought atoms were small, and then they found out something smaller. But the last thing was they just found subparticles, and they're so small that the article I read on it said, now we know fleas have fleas. So these miracles never end. I don't know where this is going. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know when I live this program and do what it says, I got to work the steps. I got to have a sponsor. I got to go to meetings. I don't have to. I choose to now. I used to have to. And I choose to have a sponsor. I choose to go to meetings. I do service work. All this tape would be a way of doing service work if it helps somebody. So I stuck around, and I kept hearing in the meetings, don't leave before the miracle happens. And I didn't. I got the miracle one day when I believed there is a God and I'm not it, and how he purifies the air and keeps the water drinkable, and he keeps the sun burning and all this other stuff that we take for granted. He's got to be an awesome God. He's way beyond my pay grade. That's all I know. And I'm grateful to share, because I don't have any answers. I'm not that smart, but I have a lot of experience, strength, and hope in recovery. I've got 41 years in 3 or 4 programs and a post-traumatic stress recovery. And all of those are miracles, and that's surviving. And I don't have any intention. I'm getting older and I'm slowing down, but I have no intention of quitting any of them. My whole life revolves around what those 12 steps say to do. And I don't just do it, you have to live it. To me, church is the same way. If you just go into church and sit in the pew and don't listen, you might as well not even be there. The people who go in and listen and get the message, they have miracles happen to them. So I'm a believer in miracles. Oh, one other story. I was in Lake Havasu, Arizona, and I wanted to go to an AA meeting. So I looked it up in the book, and I went downtown, and I went to the address, and I walked in the door, and above on the wall was a big sign saying, we don't believe in miracles. And I thought, oh, I must be in the wrong place. And then underneath in finer print, it said, we count on them. And then I knew I was in AA. We count on the higher power doing for us what we can't do. And he does what we can't. I can't purify the air for you or the water or anything else, but I can share a lot of experience, strength, and hope, because I've made a lot of mistakes. I tell people that in my meetings. If you've made a mistake, come and talk to me, because I think I've made them all. And if I haven't, I'll learn from yours, so I don't have to do it. But that's about it. It's I'm happy, and I never. Oh, and I'm comfortable in my own skin. And when I first heard that in early recovery, that's never going to happen. I don't like me. I'm not a nice person, and now because I've changed, I am a nice person, and I do like me. I'm working on loving me, and I kind of do sometimes, but not all the time. So that's what I did. That's what worked for me. And I pray to God that this message will help somebody, because that's all I have. Thank you very much. Make sense?
Totally.